possibly as soon as next week at the site of the NBA All-Star Game in Los Angeles. You can't make this shit up. The WNBA and the WNBA were not available for comment on Saturday. That is wild. So, over to Ramona Shelburne, who posted this on her Twitter X. Catching up.
NBA All-Star Weekend in Los Angeles on February 15th. Additionally, the WNBA Players Union just released a film with a very clear message on the 1964 NBA All-Star strike. Players take the shot when the time is right, and everyone is looking. This is no longer merely speculative. The next step might be a player picket line at the Intuit Dome, according to sources in the Sports Business Journal. You're not the only one who thinks that sounds like a PR disaster.
Now that the WNBA players could potentially strike NBA All-Star Weekend. This would be one of the dumbest PR moves in the history of the planet. Once again, when the WNBA players came on the court during their All-Star Weekend wearing the Pay Us What You Owe Us shirts, it was maybe the biggest video on this channel all of last year, and not in a good way.
The players are requesting the following: a salary cap of more than $10 million, team revenue sharing, and a 30% portion of overall revenue. Response from the league: 15% or less. No team revenue split, no cap movement. And this is the crucial information. After 6 weeks, the WNBA owners essentially handed back the same idea with a few small changes. Negotiation isn't that. It's a message. The takeaway is that we're not going to change what we think is financially feasible.
If they're hell-bent on getting that 30% of gross, the season's done. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. It doesn't make any sense. So, the WNBA's latest collective bargaining proposal submitted to the Players Union Friday night did not include a revenue split beyond 15%. Sources told Sports Business Journal Saturday. The WNBA PA waited almost 6 weeks for a WNBA request for 30% of share of revenue and team revenue and $10 million plus salary cap. Although it was believed the league had previously offered 15%, sources told Sports Business Journal it was always less than 15%, and that Friday's night offer similarly does not surpass.
The Players Union is now contrasting their current circumstances with those of 1964. NBA players vowed to skip the All-Star Game that year unless the league agreed to recognize their union and set up a pension plan. They were playing back-to-back games without any protection during the off-season, staying in budget hotels, and traveling in crammed buses. Without a safety net, injured players were cut. Bill Russell and other celebrities were also battling for fundamental rights. The strike was successful. It permanently altered professional basketball and compelled the NBA to acknowledge the union. The issue with that analogy, though, is this. In 2025, hardly none of those circumstances will apply to the WNBA. WNBA players don't travel in small buses. They are now flying charter. They have contracts that are guaranteed, that a pension system is in place, that they have medical care. For 28 years, NBA owners have supported the league, which has lost money nearly every season while still paying players salaries that are higher than its earnings.
In the 50s and early 60s, the NBA was a struggling upstart. Players traveled on cramped buses, stayed in cheap motels, received next to nothing per diems, and played brutal back-to-back schedules with no off-season protections. They had no collective bargaining, no guarantees, and no real rights. Locked into restrictive contracts, players couldn't change teams. Injured players were treated as disposable. One bad break could end a career, and retirement came with no pension and no safety net. Even the biggest stars weren't spared. Bill Russell.
Okay, that's where I'm going to stop it. Why am I stopping it? Because almost none of that applies to the WNBA. They're not riding on cramped buses. Good God. So next weekend, by the way, Sunday, February 15th, at the home of the LA Clippers, the Intuit Dome. Yikes.
And this is where the elephant in the room, public perception, occurs. The response to WNBA players wearing "Pay Us What You Owe Us" shirts during their 2024 All-Star Weekend was not positive. Unlike what the players had anticipated, it turned into one of the season's major storylines. The statement was completely destroyed by fans on social media sites. The most common reply was, "Given that the league has been losing money for decades, what precisely do the owners owe you?" The shirts turned into a PR nightmare when your salary are already covered by NBA income. With every major sports media outlet covering the NBA All-Star Weekend in Los Angeles, the players are now considering going on strike. What happens when the public response is even worse than it was the last time is the question that no one in the union seems to be asking.
Guys, this is a horrible move from a public relations standpoint. Wow. Okay. Maybe not. Honestly, there are a lot more Natasha Clouds that hate billionaires and all that, down with capitalism and all those causes. There's enough of those in this league to possibly run it straight into the ground. Because, hey, you're billionaires, you should just give us money. Keep subsidizing the league. Oh, you're losing money? We don't give a shit. Just keep paying us. That's the crutch of all. That's the crutch of all of this. That's not being said out loud. They know they're billionaires and think they should just get paid.
Let's discuss what is actually causing this. Because it is impossible to overlook the ideological divide that lies beneath all of the CBA bargaining jargon. It is not conjecture that a sizable percentage of WNBA players have made their political views widely known. They think there shouldn't be billionaires. They think it is morally required to redistribute wealth. They contend that because NBA owners can afford it, they ought to support the WNBA indefinitely, regardless of profit margins. Players that have voiced their opinions regarding these positions include Natasha Cloud. The sentiment is that we shouldn't be paid what we have generated in income. You should pay us since you are a billionaire. That isn't a negotiation for business. That is a basic difference of opinion regarding the proper operation of capitalism. Furthermore, it is nearly impossible to reach a compromise while bargaining with others who think your wealth is illegitimate.
On strike. And it's going to be man. Honestly, as somebody that has a sports channel, I should be rooting for this to happen. Honestly, I should be rooting for this to happen. Seriously. I think it would be the worst idea ever if they are looking to hold the line with, look, the majority of sports fans. Sure, you've got a little minority segment of the old WNBA guard that's like, oh my God, pay the players. It's so unfair, but we all hate billionaires because that's what our politics are.
That 1964 footage was uploaded by the Players Union 2 days ago. The host states, "The lesson from 1964 is evident as the WNBA gets closer to what would be its first ever strike, music. Players take the shot when the time is right, and the world is looking. Sunday is NBA All-Star Weekend. Millions of people will be watching on television, and the Inuit Dome will be crowded with reporters and celebrities. Maximum pressure, maximum visibility." With the exception of the 1964 players, the people sympathized. They were actually taken advantage of. They had valid complaints that were understandable to anyone. What do players in the WNBA have? Charter flights were added despite financial losses, salaries already surpassing league revenue, a league that has been subsidized for almost 30 years, and a demand for 30% of gross revenue when the league doesn't make enough money to make that financially feasible without even more NBA subsidies.
In the video, the host notes, quote, as the WNBPA approaches what could be its first ever strike, the lesson from 1964 is clear. If the moment is right and the world is watching, that's when players take the shot. Oh my God. Let's just watch a hair bit of it. Oh, here we go.
a more perfectly timed one than the 1964 NBA All-Star strike that forced union recognition and changed professional sports forever. Today, NBA superstars are some of the most highly paid, respected, and influential.
According to the Sports Business Journal, the players have given the WNBA Executive Committee nearly unanimous approval to declare a strike if they so choose. Nearly unanimous. This indicates that the great majority of players are prepared to leave. And sources informed SBJ that there is a sincere belief among the union that a picket line would be the next calculated move, perhaps as early as next week in Los Angeles.
Consider that timeline.
On Friday evening, the league turned in their proposal. Sources began discussing a possible strike for All-Star Weekend the following Sunday by Saturday. That isn't a tactful reaction to unsuccessful talks. That is a prearranged tactic. Even before they saw the league's response offer, the union was preparing this action.
Let's play this out then.
What would happen if WNBA players did, in fact, bring picket signs to the NBA All-Star Weekend on Sunday? First, there will be extensive media coverage right away. The story will appear in every sports media. The headline, WNBA players striking at NBA All-Star Weekend, speaks for itself. In order to put pressure on the league, the union is banking on that prominence. They are placing a wager that the owners will be forced to give in due to public pressure. The public's response, however, is what they aren't taking into consideration. The contrast will be harsh when NBA players are inside celebrating a league that brings in $11 billion annually, while WNBA players picket an NBA event, demanding 30% of income from a losing league. The workers' fight for fair salaries isn't the optics. The gimmick is subsidized workers asking for more money from those who are currently supporting them. This will be completely dismantled by social media. The ordinary sports fan knows the fundamentals of economics, not because they despise WNBA players. When revenue is insufficient to pay expenses, you cannot demand 30% of revenue. When you're flying charter and the guys in the NBA were riding buses in 1964, you can't compare yourself to them. When the owners have been paying you more than the league makes for 28 years, you are not allowed to wear "Pay Us What You Owe Us" shirts. The 2024 All-Star shirt episode ought to have served as a cautionary tale. Even though the union agreed and coordinated the controlled message, it nonetheless had a stunning backlash. They are now contemplating a strike, which is considerably less popular than previously and far more violent at someone else's event. The audience for this political theater performance is already doubtful. And this is the more serious issue. Suppose the strike occurs. Suppose it attracts a lot of attention. What's the final outcome? The league has already stated its stance. 15% or less. Music, the 30% demand has not changed. No salary cap of $10 million. After 6 weeks, the owners finally stated that our initial offer was still valid. Under public pressure, that negotiation stance is not going to crumble. We've ran the figures according to that position. We aren't pretending that this isn't sustainable. The media reports on the players' strike. They are roasted by social media. Then what? Since the math remains the same, the owners continue to say no. A 30% income share is unaffordable for the WNBA without further NBA subsidies. Music. It's also obvious that the NBA owners are setting a boundary. For many years, they have provided the league with subsidies. Charter flights have been added. Their marketing costs have gone up. They now have 13 teams. They are now being informed that it is insufficient. Even billionaires who support the WNBA's goals will eventually argue that this must be financially feasible. The players' union appears to think that the owners would give in to public pressure, but they are misjudging the situation. The owners will not be subject to public pressure. Since the majority of sports viewers, including casual ones, have been following the WNBA's financial predicament for years, it will be on the players. They are aware of the league's financial loss. They are aware that NBA owners fund it. They are aware that even though the 2024 season had record-breaking attendance and viewership, it was a loss-making season. Therefore, the public does not react to such avaricious proprietors when players seek 30% of gross revenue. What is the precise source of that money, in your opinion? At this point, the ideological gap turns into a tactical weakness. A strike makes sense if you truly think billionaires should just pay you because they can. Negotiating a sustainable company strategy is not your goal. You are making an effort to take money away from those you think shouldn't have it in the first place. However, if your goal is to create a league that can sustain itself without perpetual assistance, that can make enough money to pay greater salaries, consequently, a strike during NBA All-Star Weekend is ineffective. It perpetuates the idea that the WNBA is reliant on the NBA, incapable of sustaining itself, and reluctant to acknowledge financial reality. When examined closely, the 1964 comparison breaks down. The NBA players were defending their fundamental rights. WNBA players are battling for a bigger, as yet unestablished revenue split. The public sympathized with those NBA players due to their objectively appalling circumstances. While flying charter to games in cutting-edge arenas with guaranteed contracts, WNBA players are pleading for pity. Attempting to make that comparison will not work because the scenarios are not comparable. What then ought to be done by the players? Negotiate. Rather than comparing themselves to mistreated workers from 60 years ago, demanding 30% and refusing to yield, or striking at someone else's event in the hopes of garnering viral attention. Find a number that works by sitting down with the league. With performance bonuses linked to revenue growth, it might be 18% or 20%. Perhaps it's a progressive scale that goes up as the league starts to turn a profit. However, the figure must represent financial realities rather than ideological wishful thinking. Because this is what an NBA All-Star Weekend strike achieves. It creates news stories for 48 hours. It produces a moment of virality that is ridiculed on social media. The league's stance is strengthened since they are now bargaining under public pressure and cannot be perceived as giving in. Just before the 2025 season begins, it harms the WNBA's reputation. Additionally, the math remains unchanged. The league is still unable to pay 30%. Both sides are now firmly established, and the owners continue to refuse. Nearly all of the players' union members have approved a strike. This implies that the executive committee can call it at any time. Additionally, according to sources, they are giving next Sunday in Los Angeles significant thought. One of the biggest blunders in the history of professional sports labor will occur if WNBA players do, in fact, display picket signs at the ITU Dome during NBA All-Star Weekend. Not because strikes are always terrible, but rather because this particular strike with these demands reads more like tone-deaf entitlement than just a valid form of labor action. The WNBA recently experienced its best season ever, which is the saddest part. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark attracted unheard of attention. Records for attendance declined. The ratings went up. Sales of merchandise skyrocketed. At last, the league was gaining traction with mainstream viewers. Now, rather than taking advantage of that expansion and negotiating a CBA that shows cautious optimism for the future, the players' union is threatening to go on strike at another event and insisting on a revenue split that would necessitate even greater subsidies from the very people they are opposing. If 3 reasonable players out of 10 think this is a bad idea, they should speak up right now because once the picket line is drawn, the cameras begin to run, and the demands are being discussed on social media, there is no turning back. The cost of the damage will be borne by someone other than the owners. The league, players, and fans are the ones who genuinely want to see the WNBA thrive on its own terms. This is the question that you must respond to in the comments. Would you walk the picket line on Sunday if you were a WNBA player? Would you strike during NBA All-Star Weekend if you knew that the public would react negatively? Or would you advise your union to return to the bargaining table in order to reach a mutually agreeable agreement? Since this is not 1964, the world is observing, but they won't see what the players believe they will.